Well, good morning, everybody. My first map today doesn't look like much when we kind of watch it here, but it's actually got a very important feature in it, and is this frontal boundary. You can see the winds coming out of the north or northwest around this low that's over parts, almost over Detroit right now. But the southern edge of the frontal boundary has made it all the way through Texas, parts of the south, and is right now going to stall out a bit right here across the east coast. And what this means is we've been able to finally deliver some much cooler air farther into the southern part of the United States, through the middle of the country all the way down here. And why this is important is because for weeks on end, we have had excessive heat watches and warnings in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, throughout the south. And with that cooler air coming through here early this morning, we have got only this region left down here in the south that has excessive heat watches and advisories and warnings. Now, this is a short-lived event, unfortunately. We're going to watch a large ridge open back up into this area, but it is incredible to see that. Now, the other place that we're going to watch these excessive heat watches and warnings fade quickly is going to be in the northwest and also in California. By the time we get to the end of this week, the pattern's going to shift, and that shifting in the jet stream pattern is going to finally deliver troughs of low pressure, better chances for rainfall, and absolutely, well, just great weather, honestly, for parts of the Pacific Northwest, given the heat that they're experiencing right now. Okay, other than that, we do have an area that we have under flood watch today. Very heavy rainfall yesterday from the low that moved across parts of the upper Midwest. I'll show you more about that in a second. But, for a lot of people down in south, to have a low that's not in the 80s in parts of Texas is just incredible. But just take note, we have some lows here in the 40s and 50s already here from Nebraska, actually stretching all the way back to Colorado and Wyoming up to northern Wisconsin. So pretty chilly morning for a lot of folks. Compared to normal, the temperatures dropped off in some places 10 to 15 degrees, and I can just only imagine what that feels like down here after dealing with such extensive heat. Now, to get right into the main story here, this is what we need to talk about, the shifting in this pattern, because as we discussed in the last couple of days, we're losing this feature. Now, keep that in the back of your mind. This trough of low pressure that has been over the Aleutian Islands and Bering Sea has helped drive the pattern as it currently is, which is blocked up a little bit with a high over low here. Although I should be very careful in using that term. A block technically has to be around for 10 days, so this is not blocked up. It's just a stalled out high over low pattern. That has helped keep these troughs of low pressure driving, out of the Canadian Prairie into the Great Lakes and east. Now, if the map looks a little different from what I normally show you, it's because I'm not showing you just the anomalies. That usually looks like this. I'm using something a bit different today. It's the 500 millibar sigma. So this would be a standard deviation. So when you average the whole planet's, or actually not the whole planet, excuse me, if you average every region with their standard height of the 500 millibar pressure level, and then you compare the current forecasted pressure level to that, you can put it on a distribution. I'm doing this on purpose. First of all, whenever you see a deep low, like this is Fernanda, okay, or the low that's over parts of Illinois and Iowa this morning, it's very common for these lows to be 2 to 3 standard deviations away from the mean, but they're very hyper-focused small areas, okay? But whenever you watch a large ridge, like the one that's opening up here, so take a look at this. This is through Thursday. That's the last of those troughs, okay, coming through. As we get into Friday and Saturday, when a ridge begins to open up here, and the heights begin to press up here in this 2 to 3 standard deviation above normal range, this is exceptional. And just for some context, I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of years ago, there was a very large ridge. This was in 2021, June of 2021. It hit parts of British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest. It was right here. That ridge was 6 standard deviations above the mean. And that was, I think, the largest I've ever seen. That's the one that took Portland, Oregon up to a temperature, I believe, 118. Just as a reminder, yesterday, when they were sitting under this ridge, they got to 108. So just incredible to see the pattern making this flip. Now, as it begins to build this large ridge, this is coming late this week into the weekend. We have questions about its permanence. How long is it going to be there? What could influence its moving around? And I have to be honest with you, I think the tropics are going to be the thing that possibly disrupts the position of this. I'm going to make a case for that in this video. But as we look at it out through next Wednesday, Thursday, the ridge is quite sizable. And even though we're going to be watching for some low pressure areas on either side coming out of the tropics, we'll discuss that in a second. I think this is it's going to be a ridge that's going to be around for at least 5 to 7 days. But you noticed yesterday we talked about the ridge in the models was getting pulled back toward the south and southwest. And today's model runs are doing the same thing. And if that occurs, then there's going to be an area in through here that does not experience the long duration heat. It'll go back to the pattern we've kind of been in. in terms of temperatures, and that'll push the heat back down to where it has been for much of this summer, which is down in the south. So let's just look at it, okay? We got 7 days forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database, and these are today's highs. So another absolute scorcher here in the Pacific Northwest, okay, through the Central Valley of California, and then very close to our Gulf Coast and East Coast. But you saw the position of that front, so as we play through Wednesday, it is going to clear parts of the East Coast. But Texas, we already begin the rebound here. Now, as we go into it Thursday, this is where the transition begins to happen in the Northwest, all right? And what that's going to do is it's going to start to cool things down as the trough arrives by Friday. Really cool compared to what we've been. There's a 20-degree swing in temperatures here by Saturday. And the heat opens up in the midsection of the country where some places are going to be up to about approaching in some places, 10 to 20 degrees above average. So if we're getting here at the late August temperatures that are approaching 100, you can see that's about 17 to 19 degrees above average. Here we see on Sunday, we're going to have this corner of Iowa currently being forecasted 101 Fahrenheit. Then down into Kansas and Texas, we're going to see those 100 degrees. Also down here in the south. And this is what we see coming into Monday. So a complete pattern reversal, all because of the loss of this deeper trough of low pressure over the Aleutian Islands. Now, I was just thinking about this a couple of different ways here, and I want to show you a map that I think might change quite a bit over the coming days. It is a map from Iowa State, one of my favorite websites I think that's out there, days since last heat advisory, and it's by National Weather Service office. So, of course, 0 days down here, and it's been 1 day since we've had it in parts of Oklahoma and Texas. But it's been over 2 weeks in parts of the Midwest and New England since we had the heat wave. In fact, it was the very beginning of August that one, I guess it was the end of July that we had a heat wave that moved through here. But I have questions as to whether or not we'll break a kind of a year-long streak, since we've had it in some places more than a year in parts of the upper Midwest. We're going to get some really warm temperatures into that area. But this next animation is one I really want to watch carefully, because if you remember yesterday, I said we have to see if the models stay consistent with the retrograding of the ridge. That's the westward movement of it. And what I've got for you here is your next 5 days. And getting out to day 5 through 10, that's when the biggest kind of wave of heat will be moving into the midsection of the country, the upper Midwest, this whole region here. But you saw that after that time period, we begin to see the pattern kind of pushing the ridge back south and west. And as we get out there day 10 through 15, the European model returned a large area back toward normal. It's keeping the heat south where it's been. It's going to return some of that to California and the west. This isn't excessive like we just saw, but it is certainly not a permanent shift in the temperature pattern around the Great Lakes. So that was one of our questions that we really just wanted to start to analyze and think about. So I'm going to show you in a few minutes why I think this is going to happen, at least provide some evidence as to why the models are doing it. But before we get there, I do want to just make a point that throughout most of this time period, even after today, we're going to see excessive heat coming back into the south. And you notice that from the 22nd to 23rd, we're watching for a high risk of excessive heat down here in the Delta region and getting over into the southeast. All right. Next, let's go have a look at what our all hazards weather map looks like again here, because we do need to be paying attention to what this precipitation pattern is going to do, because there's going to be a large area in through here that's going to miss out on a lot of precipitation. And if we just think about where those excessive heat watches and warnings are, one last thing on temperatures here. Yesterday I showed you month to date. I'm going to actually add on to this July. So this is really July 1st all the way through August 14th. And it's just to point out that the area that is still under the heat advisory here, some places in southern Alabama, Florida, getting over into Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, and this also includes the Southwest. I mean, we're still on par for what could be the hottest summer on record down here. All right, so it's incredible. Look at Florida. Only one climate reporting district reporting second out of 131 years. All right, last 24 hours of precipitation through 5 a.m. This was the deep low that finally delivered the much-needed rain into parts of Wisconsin. There was actually isolated flooding in one small corner of Iowa as well. We watched storms just kind of pivot around a boundary right in through this area. Now, why am I kind of pointing this out, this one spot? Well, this is an area that over the last 30, 60 days has not received precipitation. It's been one of the dry spots, especially over the last month, where all around it we've had relatively heavy rainfall. But this is the effect of that low that came through. You can see the southwest monsoon gaining a little bit of momentum and energy here. And if I take that and just add the last 72 hours, what you're going to notice is there's a bigger section here of southern Minnesota and Iowa that has missed out. Now, I'm not going to comment too much on the other part of this because these areas got rain a week ago or over the week before. But outside of that, this is the biggest hole to fill in. Very, very dry. And we need to see if anything is coming out of the Gulf to help relieve this. Because even as the ridge opens into the midsection of the country, you're still too close to it in Texas, the Red River, getting down to the lower Mississippi River Valley to get good moisture. So what has to happen is, if that ridge opens here, is something needs to come up from the southern side of it and get into this area. Now, while that ridge opens up into this direction, we're going to really open up the monsoon, and lots of storms are going to be hitting the western mountains of the United States. But if you just kind of look at the last 30 days to put everything I just said into context, you notice how dry that corner of Iowa is. But the moisture coming through Wisconsin was critical. But notice the Red River Valley of the North getting into the Canadian Prairie. You got better news for the Canadian Prairie coming up. We also keep identifying this spot in North Carolina, but then down here across the south and, of course, across the west. These are the areas that really need to see moisture moving in quickly. All right, so early this morning as the sun was rising, just kind of went over Indiana and Michigan and Wisconsin this morning in the upper Midwest. That's where that low is. And here's the main frontal boundary onto which we're going to watch storms blow up again this afternoon. But I want to show you yesterday, because as we watched that low curl up, there were some big storms ripping off down here in the southeast. Some of them bringing rain to some very important places in the Carolinas, isolated storms in Texas. But then I wanted to get to the very tail end of this so you could see with the lower sun angle the extent of the wildfire smoke in parts of Oregon. And this particular wildfire smoke doesn't have anywhere really to go in the next 24 to 48 hours, given how stagnant the flow is here. Because remember, we still have that high, over low setup here. So a lot of wildfire smoke in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, when we think about these temperatures, I want to add one last thing to it here. And I'm just going to take you to my website, agweather.com. And before I come back to these three maps, can I just show you something? Let's go to, let's go to Des Moines. So we're going to watch this heat coming in here. And I want to make just one simple point about this heat. When you think about how hot it might get, 94, 95 next Sunday, Monday, and the duration of the heat, I want to remind you of something important here. So if we go to year-to-date temperatures, this is what it's looked like for Des Moines. Now, when we see heat being forecast for September, I just want you to look at the average line because it peaks in July and early August, and then it really begins to fall off here pretty quickly. So to be 10 degrees hotter than normal at the beginning of September is not the same as being 10 degrees warmer in August or July, because you've already cooled off 5 of those degrees. So just keep the risk of the longer duration heat that we've seen in some of the forecast models just in the back of your mind in that regard. Okay, let's come back to this site though, and we'll take a look at where we have severe weather threat today. So here, Carolinas, Virginia today, we're going to watch the upper Midwest tomorrow as the front comes through, and I'm going to show you that looking at the high resolution rapid refresh model. So picking up at 5 a.m., we're going to watch that boundary right here this afternoon and this evening light up for the risk of severe storms. Isolated, it appears, moving right here through parts of North Carolina, a very dry area, but stretching all the way back down almost to the Florida Panhandle. The southwest monsoon gets a good kick today, and then you're going to watch at the end of this animation as that front tries to clear the east. The next low, the last of them, coming through Manitoba into Ontario, is going to try to drag a front over the Red River Valley. This is where we're going to keep an eye on the risk of stronger storms tomorrow. But the bigger picture is once that ridge opens up, this is what we've got for precipitation. So this is now. This is where the system goes into New England. Here's the storms we're going to watch. You can see that rain shadow effect of the Appalachian Mountains. And then there's going to be a large region in through here that gets nothing for a while. Southwest monsoon opens, troughs of low pressure deliver chances for storms in the Pacific Northwest. And the chances of getting an inch of rainfall are highest along the periphery of the ridge. So we talked yesterday about the stalled out boundary here. We talked about the southwest monsoonal flow coming in, the ridge running storm systems coming over the top. In the middle is where everything is out. Now this is going to be something important to talk about, because there is the potential on the southern side of that ridge to bring in some moisture into Texas. But let's go to the drier side of this. This is the best chance of having less than half of an inch of rainfall. And here we can see the chances of having less than a tenth of an inch over the next 10 days. So that's the influence of that ridge, all right? Next, we're going to look at the week 2 outlook. So we have the CPC, the European model, and the GFS. Just a lot of agreement here. And honestly, it mostly agrees with what you see from the CPC forecast. Now, this will be intriguing. And what's going on here is all going on in the tropics right now. Now, through 2 a.m. this morning, the National Hurricane Center has given a 30% chance of development to the trough that just left Africa, excuse me, and a 10% of the lead shortwave, or not shortwave, excuse me, African easterly wave that's come out here. But when we look at the forecast models and we just try to assess where the model's putting down low pressure in the tropics, that's all this is. This isn't individual hurricanes. This is just where the models identified centers of low pressure. We can start to see that there's kind of three favorite areas. One here, you're going to watch another one here, and keep an eye in Texas. Let's watch right here. Because as we work our way out into early next week, there could be low pressure developing here. And if that manifests itself as a decent system, I'm not talking about a big hurricane or even a tropical storm, even a tropical depression, but low pressure into Texas would be a gift right now to deliver some rain into this region. So we can look at the ensembles, and while we've got better than a 90% chance of development here, we notice that we're in this 40 to 50% range of getting tropical low pressure forming. So that means we could start to see better moisture getting into this region. On the other side, we've got Greg going south of Hawaii. We've got Fernanda, who is right now expected to head toward Hawaii. It is a hurricane now, but is expected to weaken significantly by Saturday as it approaches Hawaii. But we need to watch the wave that's behind it here. This one that's got an 80% chance of developing. Because what is left of that system here, should it develop, could get pulled north and possibly into the southwest or some of its moisture into California. Now you're going to see a lot of, I know, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, people post these fantasy runs from the models which deliver hurricanes to California. Don't ignore that stuff, please. We're just watching for what could be left of this to get up into that region. So the last thing I want to bring up here for you today, or second to last thing, excuse me, typhoon that went over Japan. I'm watching it carefully because the forecast models are attempting to take what's left of it here and move it into the North Pacific. And why I care about that is, remember where we started this video, I care about the Aleutian Islands. That's our pattern set up right now. So see, today it's still there. The trough is there, but keep an eye on that guy right there. Because as I play forward, I'll slide in and point out what I'm watching. This is where it is by the time we get to Thursday. Notice the Aleutian Island low is gone. This is the last of the troughs coming through. Okay, we're watching right here. As we go through the weekend into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that trough has helped develop this mid-latitude trough here, which is trying to enter the Bering Sea. This will be when the big ridge begins to build here. Now, what will be important to watch is, can this invigorate a deeper low in the Bering Sea? Because if this reestablishes itself, it's difficult for the atmosphere to maintain troughs here, troughs there, and a massive ridge in this location, given the other things that are happening. So this might be why when we get out there past next Wednesday, the development of that low, aided by the tropical system, could start to influence the size and strength and persistence of the big ridge in the midsection of the country. So there is evidence that it may only last 5 to 7 days in the midsection of the United States. And very lastly now, I want to show you the newest update which came out yesterday from the Australians, the Bureau of Meteorology, BOM. They went back very aggressive on where they think this El Niño is going to go. They've got it up here again, possibly in Super Niño status, which would be about 3 degrees above average for the ocean temperatures in Niño 3.4. I say that, but they have yet to actually put out and make the call that, this is just full-blown El Niño. So it's important that they have an alert out, but they've yet to make the call on it. But I'll show you that from September into October, November, and then December, when El Niños typically reach a peak, the Bureau of Meteorology is above 2.8, almost to 3. Meteo France is up there almost at 2.8. The models that have the lowest is the NOAA. This was National Weather Service at 2 degrees above average. The British are there with them. The Japanese a little warmer, and the Canadians are kind of sitting in that same range. So this will be important to watch, and we're just going to keep an eye on this because we talked yesterday about what the pattern for fall and winter might look like. We'll keep that narrative going. Appreciate your time this morning, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.